what was a temple for our forefathers? A temple was a place where the gods were living. Later, we made temples, churches, in believing that now God will come into there, but in the original time. So, he saw something like a temple in this big village or small city. He is sitting himself in the splendorness of the God on the co-pilot seat. The splendorness of the Lord comes to a standstill over the temple. Slowly, slowly, he sinks inside the so-called temple. And Ezekiel realized at that moment that the noise of the wings were this time higher and louder than what he had heard before in the desert, because now the echo comes back from the walls of the so-called temple. Then it comes to a standstill. Ezekiel gets out of the space shuttle, and of a sudden a glittering being appears again, one of the strangers, and he says to Ezekiel, "Oh humans, you have eyes to see, but you see nothing. And you have ears to hear, but you hear nothing." And then the man in glittering suit gives Ezekiel a measuring device and orders him to measure this whole building, the so-called temple. Ezekiel, in the meantime, he understands that this has nothing to do with God. So he has courage. He asks back to the glittering man, "Why? Why should I measure this temple?" And the other one says, "That's the reason why we brought you here, humans." So Ezekiel starts to measure length and wide and how many stairs, etc. All this you can read in the Bible, all the measurements of the so-called temple. Now in Germany, we had a German engineer, his name is Hans Herbert Bayer. And he read these measurements and he asked himself, is this a true building? Or is it just imagination, fantasy? Because the theologians say this temple, this building is a future temple in a future Jerusalem. But the German engineer wanted to know, is this a real object? And he started to calculate exactly according to Ezekiel's measurement. And out comes a building which looks today like a stadium, like a football stadium. And then this German engineer came to me and I saw his calculations, absolutely precise. I asked him, have you ever heard of NASA, of Mr. Blumrich's reconstruction? Because NASA did only reconstruct the splendorness of the highest, which means the shuttle, while the German engineer was only reconstructing the so-called temple. So one have the splendorness of the highest and the temple. So I brought the two men together, the German engineer and the NASA engineer. And the space shuttle fit perfectly into the temple by every centimeter. The so-called temple was nothing else but the base station for the extraterrestrial shuttle. They had to come to a standstill, they had to repair it, they have to do something. And we have definitely a proof of all this. And here, at least for me, something is very, very important. You see, when you read the Bible, just as a normal people, you read, and the temple will be so and so long, the temple will be so and so large, will be so and so high, etc. Will be means future. But the original Ezekiel has nothing written in the future. I know the original, I translated it myself. In the original he says, the building is so and so long, is so and so large, etc. How can this future, this form and grammatic of the future? The theologians believe that Ezekiel had a vision of the Almighty God. And the Lord now shows him a future temple in the future Jerusalem. Now the Semitic language, the original Semitic language, has no vocals, has no A, E, O, U, has only consonants. And you simply put these vocals in it. Now, because they believe that Ezekiel is talking about a future temple in the future Jerusalem, they have translated the Ezekiel in the form of the future. The temple will be so and so long, will be so and so long. In reality, it's all present. The temple is so and so long, is also. The temple was nothing than the landing base for the extraterrestrial shuttle.